Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's so great to be here. I am here with the fabulous Chloe Jabaruti from Doze Sleep Coaching. It is so great to see you, Chloe. Thank you very, very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us today.
Thank you for having me. It's really exciting.
Oh, good. Well, we are here to talk all about your journey to becoming a holistic sleep coach, what brought you here in the first place, how you found it, and what difference it's made, and what you're up to now with clients supporting people far and wide. So do you want to just start us off by telling us a little bit about you and your background and how you got fascinated by sleep?
Yeah, so before I had my son, who is now 4, I'd worked about 10 years in market research as a project manager, so very different. Then I had my son, I was off on maternity leave, and I knew I wanted to go back part-time, but I didn't want the part-time salary. I wanted the full-time salary, but for part-time hours. So I was also obsessed with sleep at the time, which I think most new parents probably are. My son, not a very good sleeper. And I remember coming downstairs to my husband and being like, I'm going to become a sleep consultant. Great idea. I did a lot of sort of research into it, the different courses and how I was going to do it. And I found the holistic sleep coaching program, which felt a really natural fit with sort of my parenting style and the way that I'd handled my son's sleep up till then, not to the level that I managed afterwards. But so I found it through that. And then I set up I did the course in 2020. I set up at the back end of that year, and the rest is history.
Yeah, well, what is that history? What is your situation now? So you now work part-time as you wanted?
I
Have
did
you
want to,
achieved
yeah.
that?
Yeah, so I never really wanted to quit my job. That was never necessarily the goal. The goal was to top up my income to a full-time salary and have a bit more flexibility on those days, because it's hard to have that flexibility when you work in an office. I've managed that. So I work 3 days a week with my normal job. I do 2+ days, a bit more than 2 these days, with Doze, and it works great. I mean, I make more than I would have done if I'd have worked full time in my job. And I'm at a point now where I'm actually looking to expand my team of sleep coaches, because I can't meet the demand of the consultations in the hours that I have. It's just impossible. And it was a big toss up of like, do I quit my job or do I do this? And it felt the right decision to stay in the job and do that, because I've worked hard in it. So yeah.
Yeah. And several people that do this training like to kind of keep their fingers in 2 different pies, like their old career and
Yeah.
also their new sleep coaching career. And they do that for a number of different reasons. But what's your main reason for continuing the juggle between your market research work and maintaining the sleep, but also managing somehow, you're a superwoman, to expand the sleep coaching with a bit of creative thinking there?
I think the main reason is probably I've really worked hard to build my pre-child career, and I do enjoy it. It sounds a bit dull, market research, but it's actually quite interesting. It's an interesting sort of area, and I also like the stability of that. I like the stability of the income alongside. I mean, to be fair, Doze income is fairly stable now. It has been for at least 18 months, fairly stable. So it's not that the Doze income isn't stable, but it's just, there's always more risks with going completely self-employed than there is kind of having that mix. So for me, it's kind of mix of the finance probably the main driver.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're really making it work, and that fits in with your parenting and your lifestyle that you've worked hard for, I presume.
Yeah, I mean, it's great because obviously Theo, my son, he's 4, he just started school this year, so we have 1,000 events a week that seems to happen when they start primary school. So, I've got loads of Christmas things to go to, and I don't have to worry as much because I can just fit things around. Worst case, I do some extra consultations at the weekend or in the evening. It's quite flexible, whereas that you just can't do that if you're in an office and you have to go into town. And so it really helps me to sort of fit around him as well, and that's really, really good. That's obviously there was the main goal of going part-time in the first place, so I didn't want to replace a full-time job with being a workaholic in a business as well. It needed to have that balance.
Yeah, well done. It sounds like you've got a really, really good balance. So, and that's really inspirational for other people to hear, that there are so many ways of making this work. But I'm curious now to move on to thinking about how your business in some way aligns with your parenting. So do you feel like the way you practice as a sleep coach, does that kind of mirror your parenting values, and was that important to you?
Massively important. So when I was looking for a course to kind of become a sleep coach, I was looking at different ones that were out there, and the holistic sleep coaching program felt the most natural fit to me. There wasn't really any others that aligned with my parenting style. So there was a lot of that felt like scaremongering to me in the sleep world, and a lot of kind of methods that felt very uncomfortable to me. I never liked the idea of control crying or cry out. It just never sat right with me. But I, at the time, thought that was actually the only option. I didn't really know there wasn't another option. So I think finding the holistic sleep coaching program was actually my first awareness that there was a group of people who didn't do it, which was really interesting. So the minute I saw it, I was like, that's it. And so Doze is that it's kind of, it is my parenting style, but in a business. There is nothing I would recommend to a family that I wouldn't do myself, and that's been really important to me, that I feel that it's genuine and that I want to help people and fit to their parenting styles too.
Yeah, amazing. And what would you say, so thinking about the course as a whole and everything you've learned, would you say that there are any things that you've learned that have really, really transformed the way you work? So are there some key areas that have shaped that sort of transformation for you?
I think the big main one for me is understanding sleep needs and understanding how to, like, that before I did the holistic sleep coaching program, all that you see about sleep needs is that they all need 12-hour nights and 4 hours worth of naps and these really generic routines. And I remember I got bought a book by an infamous sleep expert who I shall not name, from a colleague, and I just remember thinking Theo's not following any of the rules, he's not doing anything he's meant to, feeling so anxious about it. And so one of the big things with the sleep coaching program was to understand, oh my goodness, they're all human beings are different, which sounds really obvious now, but when you're in that midst of that sleep deprivation, you just don't get that, and you think that. And so that's actually, I'd say, within the past 18 months become the core of my approach. I actually talk about sleep needs more than I talk about anything else. I almost see the responsive bit as like pinned on the back. It's like, this is what we're going to focus on, because that's what stressed me out as a new parent, this concept of and Theo is low sleep needs, and I seem to have become like the Pied Piper of low sleep needs babies, because everyone I speak to seems to have low sleep needs babies. So yeah, that's definitely the number one.
But in a way, so you're talking about actually quite, on the face of it, something that sounds really simple and obvious. However, it isn't, is it? Because what you've just alluded to is the fact that anxiety about sleep needs also affects your mental health and your parenting self-efficacy, your sense of I'm screwing this all up or I'm nailing this, can all hinge on whether you feel like your child hits those sleep parameters. But it's not just a case of memorizing a table of sleep needs, is it? Because we also know that things like regulation and development and all of that come in. So were there any other key areas that have been influential, I suppose, in your practice?
I think another one would be the actual sleep strategies and seeing them in practice through the kind of case studies, because this was another one. Before doing the program, I didn't really know what the responsive method was. I knew what control crying was, but I was like, what is are they magic? Like, do they manage to get like sleep training results with doing nothing? Like, I didn't really understand how it worked. So I think seeing, all the strategies, and there's so many in there. I mean, even now I always end up flicking back to the course because you have lifetime access. I'm always flicking back to it. Like, especially if you've got a weird case and you don't know what to do. So I think that, plus obviously having the case studies, and you can actually watch a live consultation and see what's happening and how it works and how to do it, because I think it's all well and good learning a load of facts, but how do you actually do the consultation? And I think that was hugely important, to actually having the confidence to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all just feeds in together, doesn't it? All of these little pieces of the puzzle, but also, as you rightly point out, it's not just like taking that sleep training approach of, you know, guaranteed results in 3 days or whatever. It's actually just a completely different approach. Has that kind of influenced the way that you manage client expectations in some way?
Yes, big yes. Early doors, when you first start out and you don't really know and you don't know what you're doing, and you just, the amount of learning I've had to go along and the amount of caveats I add to everything now that I didn't do early doors. And it's being realistic with people that, you know, a responsive approach is not the easy way out. And I think that's sometimes maybe the perception that kind of control crying is going to be the hard way, but if let's do it nice and gently, that's going to be easy. But actually, no, it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of, you know, drive and willpower from the parents to do something that takes a little bit longer. So yeah, I have to caveat so much around the expectations of parents. It's not going to be instant. It's going to take work, and there might have to be some changes, but we can do it in a way that suits them.
Yeah, but that also takes a lot of skill on your part, doesn't it? Which is obviously why we talk about counseling skills and listening skills and all of that kind of stuff as well. So how has, moving on from thinking about the sort of sleep content, how would you say the business support has helped you with your the development of Doze?
I think that's been really interesting, because I remember you do a lot of thinking when you first set up your business, and there's a lot in the course about kind of how to create your own voice and understand the business that you want to be. And I think that's been something that I've learned a lot about. When I first started, I did what every other new sleep coach does. You use pastel colors and you talk really softly and nicely, and you'd be this very gentle person. And I think over time, you know, going back to the modules and really thinking about it, it's really helped me to understand that your voice is really important, who you are and who, you know, the place that you want to fit in the industry is something. So I think understanding that side of marketing, like who your ideal client is, who are you actually appealing to, that's actually, I would say, is the most important part of all of that. You know, like it's all well and good getting your pricing right and you've got the right insurance, but you need to know that you're talking to the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with pastel, of course, but if that's not who you
No,
are,
there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying it's just not me. So it's,
yeah, absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
finding who the you is in that. And I think that was something that took me a while. And I think, you know,
Yeah. Was it something you were scared of, do you think? Were you sort of scared of being who you were and being different?
Absolutely. You know, I didn't show my face on the account for a long time. I didn't want to do lives. I didn't want to do stories. I wouldn't do reels. I tried to keep it very professional. And it was really only when I was like, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to be me, that it actually started to grow. Because obviously people don't want to work with some, you know, posts on Instagram. They want to work with a real person that feels like a real human and that matches them. But yeah, I've had to fake it till I make it. I'm not a particularly confident, extroverted person. I have had to pretend to be that person, but now it comes quite naturally, so it's fine. But it took a bit of practice.
You were telling me about finding your voice, and I'm just curious about whether you feel like you're in competition now with the sleep trainers or the people who are selling kind of generic options, or whether you feel actually like you are in this confident place where you're really proud of the offering that you have for families. Like, can you just describe how you feel about all of that?
That's a really great question, actually. And yeah, I think there is an element of that, because I think changing my message to be a bit blunter, a bit bolder, has perhaps shifted me, or at least it looks like it shifted me along a spectrum. You know, my methods haven't changed. I'm exactly the same, but maybe perceptually it's shifted me a little bit. But I actually think it's really important, because I think that sometimes responsive parenting, gentle parenting can be kept for a particular demographic. And I think it's actually really important that we broaden that out, and that you don't have to be a particular type of person with a particular background, with a particular income bracket. You know, you can be anyone and practice responsive parenting. And I think from my perspective as well, you know, I am not a particularly gentle person. I'm not a very maternal person. I'm not very, you know, a lot of the accounts that I see, which are amazing, but they're just not very me. And it's creating a space in the sleep world for parents who are like me, I guess, that aren't those things, but they know that they don't have to sleep train just because they're not maternal and mumsy. And it's that, I think it's an important space to hold.
Yeah, well, and if you've found that space and you can cater for that group of people, that's so important. I'm not very maternal either. People often assume that I am, but I'm actually not. I'm a responsive parent, but yeah, I'm not the fairy cake baking type. And not that that means anything about being maternal, but
I know
exactly
what I mean. I know exactly what I mean. And no, I'm not either. And I think it's just broadening it out, gentle parents, responsible parents don't have to be gentle people, and that's fine,
Well, I think it's important because actually we're joking around about what maternal might mean to different people and being a bit facetious about it. But actually, the serious point about that is that sometimes you can typecast people who are responsive, gentle parents. And what that does is it actually ostracizes people who don't feel like that describes them, or they don't feel aligned with that. And actually what you've done brilliantly is you've said, actually, you can be this kind of person. You can be big and bold and not enjoy baking cupcakes, and you can still parent responsibly and not sleep train, which is amazing.
And I think that's it. I think it's that side of it that, I think a lot of people think that being a responsive parent means you need to breastfeed and co-sleep and do all these things, whereas actually you can just as easily responsibly parent if you formula feed and want them sleeping in a cot. Like the two are not linked. You can be responsive and parent in a way that suits you. And I think sometimes that gets missed a little bit in the industry. So I like to make that clear.
Yeah, well, good for you. I mean, I think it's really important that we don't keep this from people, right? So you're trying to make it something that's accessible, and I applaud you for that. What would you say are the biggest sort of mindset shifts? So thinking about the way you run your business and the way that you operate as a sleep coach, what would you say have been some of the things that you've had to unlearn or rethink or shift your perspective around?
I am a chronic people pleaser. That is my nature. And that I've had to shift a lot, because you are not, I think the biggest learning I've had to learn from doing it is that you are not in control of everybody and that you cannot control all their situations and that you are not responsible for things. And that's something that I've really, really battled with. And I still do now. I can feel a sinking feeling if family tells me, it's not going very well. My heart actually drops and I feel like, oh, it's me. I've done something awful. I've told them the wrong thing, when actually I'm not in control of them, and I'm not in control of the situation. However, I'm not a puppet master of all the babies in the world. I don't have that skill. So that's been a real shift for me, and not just kind of from the people pleasing aspect of not just giving into things. Sometimes you have to have quite tough conversations with families, and that again does not fit my personality. I don't want to say, oh, maybe we need to be a bit firmer on boundaries, maybe we need to do this. It feels very awkward, and that's something I've had to learn as well.
Yeah, well, learning and trying to figure out the right way with multiple different types of people is an ongoing process, isn't it? And we're always learning. So thank you for sharing all of that. Now, if you think about your life kind of before the holistic sleep coaching program and after, what would you say has been the biggest difference so far?
Oh, I mean, before I was working 5 days in Manchester in an office, getting the bus into town. I was dying for some flexibility, and now my life's just, it feels really flexible. It feels really like I don't wake up on a Monday and think, oh God, it's a Monday. And I'm so miserable. Like I actually, for the first time, I can say I enjoy my sort of work life, which I don't know whether I necessarily enjoyed my work life. I'd worked hard for it and it was good, but I don't know whether I enjoyed it. I actually feel now my life is balanced. I've got the right balance of everything that I need in it. I've got the flexibility. I've got the income that I need. It just feels a lot calmer, I would probably say. Even though I'm really busy, it shouldn't feel calmer. I am very, very busy, but it's a nice type of busy rather than a stressed out busy.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you have just got a really good balance, and sometimes it's the balance if when the balance is wrong, that's what can be fatiguing, isn't it? So it sounds like you've really nailed that. Well done. And what would you say has been like the most important thing in terms of the structure of the program, in terms of your growth and your success moving forward?
I think it's interesting because when I did it, it was like live. It wasn't self-paced. It was done quite differently. And I kind of wish I was doing it now in a way. I think it's nicer. I was doing it at the time with a 6-month-old during a pandemic. I don't know why I thought this was a good idea at the time. It seemed a great idea. And so I kind of think, I think the actual structure of it now and the way that it works would suit me a lot better. I think the actual structure in terms of, I mean, like I said, I still always going back to it and still go back to it and use it because it just talks through in so much detail and anything you'll ever want to know. So I'm always going back to it to have a little look and find out something that might help me.
Yeah. And is it important to you, therefore, I'm guessing I know the answer to this question, but the sort of ongoing access to the modules and if you needed it, coaching and all of that stuff, has that been important for you to know?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's quite scary kind of going out there on your own, and you do the practice families and you do it and you kind of think you know what you're doing, but it is very scary when you get that first client, second client, third client. And it is nice to know that you can always go back to it, and I have so many books as well. I always use those, but the actual course, and you can just go back. The other day I had a family who had a child with extra needs, and so I was going back through the modules on that to kind of think, okay, because it's not something I see a huge amount. So most of my families tend to have young babies, so it's really useful to just have that bit of confidence that you've got a bit of support that you can use if you need it.
Brilliant. And I've got an interesting question here for you, I hope. How do you think your clients would describe you? And I'm going to follow that up with, but I'll come back to it in a minute. What do you think are the gifts that you give your clients because of the way that you work? But first of all, how do you think they would describe you?
I think they would describe me as very real and down to earth and friendly and chatty. I'm not a formal person, but I think they would also say that I'm willing to go that extra mile to help them. I'm not one of these people that like that the day that follow-up support ends, see you later. I'm really not. Don't tell other people in case they book me for that. But I'm not. I will just keep going. My goal is to always get to that root cause of it. So I think they would say persistent yet friendly is probably how they would describe it.
I like that. But what do you give them? Obviously, lots of people hire a sleep coach because they're feeling wrecked, they're exhausted, they don't want to sleep train. So they think, right, brilliant, I will hire this sleep coach who's going to support me responsively and it's going to be aligned with my parenting and all that's great. But would you say that there are other gifts that you give them as a result of working with you?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me and the thing that I feel most proud of is when people say to me, I just feel so confident now that I understand my baby. I understand the norms. I just feel like I know how to tweak things when things go different. I know what I'm meant to be doing. I know how to progress. I know what's going to happen when, they start sleeping terribly because they get a new tooth. Like, I think it's that feeling of, that's always my biggest goal with any new family. I want them to help them really understand what's going on, what is normal, why it's happening, and wanting them to kind of go away and feel that confidence. So I think the confidence and that lack of that feeling of stress that you're trying to follow something generic that's never going to work, that is to me is the biggest gift that I think I give families.
Yeah. And so on that, where do you feel like that's come from? So within the program itself, where has that come from? Because that's not necessarily a sleep strategy, is it? Where do you feel like that confidence that you give them has come from? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think it's just the complete understanding of sleep. I think that's what it boils down to. There's so much of the program that focuses on understanding the biology of sleep, the science of sleep, why they sleep the way they do, why things happen. And I think so much of the advice given out there by other people is not based on any reality. It's based on, I don't know what it's based on. They make it up. They just wave the finger about and just say that. And I think that to me is that the core of the program, it's based on reality and it's based on science and it's backed up by evidence. And so to me, I feel confident telling parents things because I'm like, it's true. It's not, I've not just made it up. And I think that to me is, and being, my background was quite academic as well from before I started in market research. And so having that backed by evidence references, you know, I really like that. That to me is, you know, I could have just kept going, learning more and more.
I mean, you know, a lot of people feel like that kind of evidence-based backup kind of validates what they're saying. So they feel like they can come to a consultation with more confidence because they know that, yeah, you're right, it hasn't just been made up. It's yeah, there's some critical thinking there, isn't there? And it sounds like that's what you've found as well, has kind of given you that you know, confident way of working with families. So that's amazing.
Absolutely, that's exactly it, because you kind of can trust what you're saying, and then they can trust what you're saying, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite module? I sometimes ask people this question.
Yeah, for me it's the module, it's the really practical one. It's the one that's all about the strategies, and that's the one that I just, you know, it's all about like doing the consultations and things like that. I think it's the actual how to do it. I think because obviously I come from a research background and I come from quite an analytical background, I'm like, that's the bit that I find really interesting. Like, and that's the bit that I love the most when I'm working with the families. I actually really like the assessment bit. That's my favorite bit. I love it. And I sit in there like writing it all out and looking at it and trying to work it out. It's like a puzzle. Like it's like something I need to solve. So I think that bit was my favorite purely from a, like I'm doing a puzzle perspective.
Amazing. I love that question because everybody always has a different module. It's different every time, but it sounds like the balance that you've found has enabled you to kind of tap into the creative, but also the critical thinking, analytical parts of your brain. And it sounds like, you know, you've found a brilliant way of combining those parts of jobs that you actually really enjoy and feel quite sort of intellectually stimulated by, as well as bringing
absolutely
in
you know, like I think different people do different things for different reasons, and different people will do the course for different reasons. But for me it's a mixture of, obviously I wanted the flexibility and the income side of things, but actually the main driver was probably learning more, helping families, and doing something that I feel passionate about and that uses my brain. Like I just, you know, I didn't want to do something that just felt brainless and like I could just do in my sleep. I like to feel like I'm doing something that's kind of progressing me. So yeah, and it definitely does. It does. I'm still now 3 years in, and I'll still have a family that just blows my mind, and I don't know what's, you know, and I have to go back to square one and try and figure it out, because it's still, you just learn more and more every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Never stop learning, huh?
Yeah.
So if you were to give one piece of advice to somebody who was thinking about becoming a sleep coach, they're not quite sure, what advice would you give them?
I think I would say, I think it's more, probably not quite advice, but it's more reassurance. Hopefully that's okay. I think, because I think my big panic was that I was going to pay money for something that wasn't going to work, and that I'd fail at, and that I'd lose all the money and that'd be it. And it's just terrible. And I think I would reassure people that if they feel passionate about it, they can make a success of it. The biggest difference because I've been here 3 years now, I see people come and go. The biggest difference I see from the people who are still going are just that they're still going. That's it. Like, it's the people who, like, you know, who just keep going even when it's hard, even when it's tough. They're the ones who are still going now. And I think it's just remembering that if you're passionate about something and you're willing to put in that effort, there's no reason you can't succeed at it. It's just, don't panic too much. Remember that you are good at stuff, and just go for it, because it is really good, and it's definitely not something I regret at all. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Well, we have loved having you. We've loved watching you grow and develop and build a very successful business. And I am so glad that you have now carved out this brilliant life where you are doing all the things that you enjoy and that are meaningful to you, but you're also able to get that work-life balance and be a parent, albeit not a cupcake making parent.
No, I'm not making, I'm rubbish at cooking, so I won't do that.
Right. You know, there's a place for people like us as well. Don't worry. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate your time. And for people who haven't bumped into you yet, how can they find you?
So I'm at Dose Sleep Coaching on Instagram. If you want to follow me, that's mainly where I am. So you find me hanging about there. So come along, follow me.
Thank you so much. Chloe, it's been an absolute pleasure. And we will catch up again very soon. Take care, everybody.
Amazing.
Thanks for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.